Well, hi Bessel, it's lovely to see you, and I'm delighted we could meet because I've got a million questions about the conference. I thought it was worth saying up front that I've been to your conference every year for the past few years, and I absolutely love it. And this year, as every year, is kind of a, it's a highlight in my spring calendar. And of course, I began to dread getting the email saying it had been cancelled. First of all, the hotel cancelled, then the airline cancelled. And I thought I'd hear from you saying it had been cancelled. So I was really pleased to hear that it's going ahead, but is it going ahead online? What have you been going through thinking, can you do this? Can you not do this? What really drives you to do this every year and keep it going?
Well, it is a meeting of science and therapy and attachment issues. And I had an experience this year that really blew my mind. There's this movie by Michel Estrick about Daryl Hammond, who was severely tortured by his mom. And I was talking to a very prominent person in the field who has a lot of respect. And he was supposed to be reporting that movie. And he says, well, Bessel, it's very simple. The guy had PTSD. And so if he just processes that and helps him to remember what his mom did to him, he'll be okay. And I go like, how can you say that? We know so much about how the attachment system leaves these very deep traces. And if you get tortured by your own caregivers at age 3, it has a dramatic effect on the way you organize your brain and your relationship to your body and your mind. And the little CBT isn't going to do the trick. And so I keep being impressed with how people are looking for quick answers, and then they don't look that the solutions don't work. And I think they're just trying to tell people, oh, don't worry about it, it's just fine. It isn't fine. At the same time, there are people doing amazing work to really figure out how different forms of trauma have an impact on the developing brain. And we always have something on that. And then there's this other gigantic field that you by now have also met, this wonderful field of attachment. And that is not trauma. If you have a mom who is too traumatized to really pay attention to you, or if you have a mom who is too drug addicted to actually wake up to your cries, or if you have a mom or a dad who is alcoholic, that has an impact on who you become. And while I love EMDR and while I love somatic processing, getting a sense of I'm loved and I'm a good person and I can light a room light up doesn't get instilled in people by simple things like processing traumatic memories. And so the field is so much richer and there's so much amazing work going on. And it's so much joy to get together with people who do this amazing work. And it's so inspiring. And we always see new people come into the field that I was ready to cancel it and sort of lay down my burden by the riverside and say, okay, 30 years is enough. And then a lot of people said, that's crazy, let's do it, let's go ahead. And as has often so happened, the energy of younger people say, come on, don't get lazy, put that conference on. and so we did. And Carrie Stephenson, who has run the conference with me, was also very enthusiastic about, let's get the show on the road again.
That's great. Do I get into the category of younger people in that context? I'm very keen that you should do it. What I get out of it each year is, even though I work obviously at Khiron Clinics at the kind of cutting edge of this field too, every time I come to your conference, I'm astonished how much I learn. And of course, there are these pockets of innovation and pockets of new information which are coming through very strongly. And you know about them, and you may, maybe you take them for granted, maybe they're so familiar to you. But for those of us who attend the conference, it's really important to have a sense of what's coming next year and the year after and the year after that. Because as you said, the problem with mental health treatment and behavioral health treatment is it's so ineffective and it's so stuck in its silos and it's so retrospective.
Right.
We're looking back of, what can we prove worked 10 years ago? And you're sitting in front of a patient, you're failing. And you're basically telling them they're failing because they're not doing what the research tells them they should be achieving. which you know my history, my story. You know how much that annoys me.
Right, right.
But, you know, one of the things I resonate with you is it annoys you too, and I love that. And I wonder if that's really one of your motivations. And what do you think the highlights of this coming conference are going to be for those of us who
Yeah.
want to see the future now?
I think what you're saying is a very important point, that I'm actually astonished how, you know, when I go to an eye doctor and I see them do surgery on my little retina, I go like, this is completely different from the way I went to medical school. These people have learned something and they're helpful. And then you go like, in psychiatry, they're stuck. And what's even worse is that the things that we have actually learned that are helpful, working with the body, working with the autonomic nervous system, EMDR, neurofeedback, all these things that we actually have learned are helpful for people, still not as helpful as we wish they were, but still much better than what people learn in school. You cannot get money to have it researched. So our field is stuck. And it's very much stuck in a sense of complacency. And I'm a clinician. I'm supposed to make my patients better. And my patients get better when I start doing some of these things. But it leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm always looking for what else can we do? Because I know sometimes people, if you find the right treatment, that people can say, it's over. I'm okay now.
Yeah.
And our job should be to get to that point. And so this year we going to have some remarkable people. It starts off with this very small little thing that has sort of been evolving over time of a few people who are really paying attention to how trauma affects the developing brain. And a person I've never had before, but have been eager to have is Christine Heim, who just a few years ago moved back to Berlin from Atlanta, where she had been, who will be talking about brain development and what we understand about brain development and its effect of trauma at various ages, how this should inform our clinical practice. And lucky enough, my friend Marty Teicher, who has spoken many times at the conference, is going to be her discussant. So these two people are two of the most amazing scientists in terms of the brain. Mm-hmm. And this year I decided to not make it too abstract, because for some people all this brain stuff gets a little hard, and they may think it's irrelevant, of course, when it isn't. And so the next speaker is a person I met at a meeting at Yale a few years ago, who is a professor there of psychology, who just wrote a memoir about herself having been diagnosed as schizophrenic and schizoaffective and all these amazing weird diagnoses that psychiatrists have. And then it turned out that she had been very severely abused as a child. And she wrote a beautiful memoir about how she really came into her own and got to really own her life as she was uncovering her trauma. And now she's a professor of psychology and she's teaching people that. And so she's a living example of, if you take the stuff seriously, you can emerge from these old things, but you have to recognize what happened and you have to deal with what happened. And she'll be talking about it from the inside out. The next pair is another group of people who are doing amazing work. And that is Tanya Singer, who also happens to be from Berlin now. She was from Leipzig before, who has done the largest study of mindfulness by anybody in the European community. Paid her for that. She saw hundreds of people practicing different sorts of mindfulness, and then did very careful analysis of what sort of mindfulness helped whom. And the conclusion she came to is that mindfulness only helps if you become mindful about yourself, and that itself is connected with self-compassion and with self-knowledge and really feeling who you are and what's going on with you. And she became a big fan of IFS, internal family systems therapy, because what she discovered in her research was that you need to access these different aspects of yourself and develop a relationship with them. And so she did the science, and then Dick Schwartz, the inventor of internal family systems therapy, is going to be her co-locutor. They're going to talk together. And then in the afternoon, the first person is Stephen Porges, well known to you, who is really one of our other colleagues who is really emerging, developing, and helping us to understand how the nervous system is organized by relationships and by attunement, and how relationships are reciprocal and go two ways, and how our central nervous system collapses when reciprocal relationships stop. And he's, as you know, because I know you're involved in that, he's developing different instruments and methods to really bring his theory, make it more available to people.
Yeah, I've been working with him on one of them, and we were looking forward to bringing the first ever prototype of it to your conference.
Good.
So,
Good.
You'll have to talk about it instead. Are you doing that with him? Is that a dialogue between the two of you?
Yeah, it's going to be a dialogue between us.
That'll be a highlight for me, because I love it when you two get together, because you inevitably find something to disagree about, and then that's lots of fun.
There are things we disagree about, actually, and we're both okay with that, actually.
I know, it's great. You model brilliantly how to have a relationship without always agreeing on everything.
Oh yeah, that's so boring. Anyway, and then the last thing of the first day is a subject we have never paid attention to, and that is the whole overlap between addiction and trauma. And because Bruno Steffens, who's an old friend, moved to Boston this year, and we get to hang out a little bit, I asked him to do that. And he was trained in somatic experiencing and has a very somatic approach to that. And I think it's a very important topic for us to pay attention.
Well, when I was in treatment 10 years ago at Melody House, he was in Dakota House next door, and he'd occasionally come in and substitute a session or two. So even then, 10 years ago, he was famed for his brilliance as a clinician. So that would be wonderful.
But he is the only Nobel Prize winner of the conference.
Really?
He was a member of the Norwegian Armed Forces in Lebanon that got the Nobel Prize for its peacekeeping. And so, while everybody I know is striving to get a Nobel Prize in science, actually, Trudeau bagged one for being a peacekeeper, which is a good reason to get the Nobel Prize, actually. Well,
it's good for the conference. Nobel Prize winners talking at your conference is a good sticker for marketing.
Yeah. So the next day, we're going to start off with Tronic and I having a dialogue about the whole issue that I mentioned earlier of how the issue of having a parent who's absent, who doesn't respond to you, who is upset and therefore cannot tune into your needs, etc., how that really shapes people's expectations and their character, and again, their brain development, all these things, I think very biology and brain development and mind all come together. And we're going to have a dialogue about how important it is to distinguish between attachment disruptions and traumatic events. And hopefully, we haven't quite decided yet, but we may show a little tape of something that you know very well, our psychodrama method, to help people to really open up their being to take in feelings of being loved and having been taken care of.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I might as well say I've done one of your psychodrama workshops, and it was exceptional. And I think you're right. There's something below the waterline in terms of the emotion, the attachment, the experience, and it's not quite obvious. And even with all my experience, both as a patient and clinically, I was surprised by the depth, the speed and depth that you reached during that session with your assistant. So
I'm as amazed and surprised as you are.
You are every time.
Whenever I do them, I go like, wow, what happened here? And that somehow, by doing the right thing, in 3 dimensions, and the critical issue there is that you need to give up all that cognitive stuff and move in 3 dimensional space where you lose your sense of time and you can insert things over time that never happened to you. It can give people a feeling of, oh, that's what it feels like when a 3-year-old is being loved.
Yeah.
And there's nothing rational about it. And so it's this process that really opens up internal possibilities in people.
Sure. That, you know, I particularly enjoyed getting to see you in a different light working as a therapist, because you know, obviously I know you as a speaker and as an author, and you know, it's great to see you holding that process and how amazingly well you do it. So yeah, I think it's a great forum for bringing that information more into the public domain. Yeah.
And so next speaker is Kathy Melchiodi, who was there last year also, who is a wonderful expressive therapist who can really, what disturbs me is our field has become so cognitive and trying to explain to people why they're messed up and telling people not to think these irrational thoughts. I find it an excellent method. I try it on my wife all the time. I explain to her how irrational her thinking is, and she always says, "Oh, thank you very much. I didn't realize it. I'm so delighted that I'm married to such a reasonable person that I will immediately give up all my irrational beliefs about the world." Like, my reaction is, how low has our profession sunk? Like, you think people are amenable to reason. And so it's very clear we can only really change if we have deep experiences that contradict how we are disposed to ourselves in the world. And Kathy, with her expressive therapy, is again very good in getting people to these deep points. And she will be doing that together with Bruce Perry, who last year was at the conference also, who I introduced as being a brother by a different mother. Bruce is also a person who really understands the brain and development and knows that you have to treat people in different ways depending on what happened to them. So it's another great combination. The next person is another issue that has been very much on my mind over the years. That is that I started to realize that when this field started, and it sort of started in the 80s, early 90s, and for me, the central characters were, at that point, Judy Herman and myself, who were at the same hospital, who were beginning to talk about this stuff. At that time, trauma treatment was very much peer treatment. And so I ran peer groups at the Veterans Administration. Judy Herman very much set up programs for incest victims to help each other. Boston happened to be a very fertile area at this point. There was a women's collective that wrote a book called Our Bodies, Ourselves, which had multiple prints and was all over the world. So it just all started off with very much of people helping each other and supporting each other. And then in recent years, I started to realize that those peer support systems have sort of disintegrated, and that our field has become more and more professionalized. And now you need to go to a social worker who has a degree, who has been approved by an insurance company before you can get treatment. Even though that social worker probably doesn't know anything about how to treat trauma, because you don't learn that in school. And so clearly our system has gone off the rails, and this whole idea that we're here for each other has disappeared. Yeah. And then this year I became aware that there had been a group of people who very systematically have been promoting and dealing with peer support and peer counseling. And so we have a Dr. Barbara Love, who will be talking about peer co-counseling, which has been going on for a long time, as very much as an inspiration for people to once again think about how you can set up peer support systems where people who actually have been there, who know it, and where you have very clear rules and very clear structures can be there for each other in a way that professionals cannot be there for each other.
Yeah.
So that's that piece. And then we have Lou Burkholz, who has been at the conference a number of times. Lou works all over the world with traumatized kids, and he does soccer with them and martial arts and group activities. And Lou is again a person who is very much into understanding how connection and synchrony and working together and being a member of a team and being seen and having teachers is an essential part for us to become healthy human beings and a member of the human race. And, I'm always delighted with what he has to offer. And then the final thing is another piece that you're familiar with yourself, Benjamin, is that, as you know, I'm married to Lisha Sky, who has years and years experience of being a body worker. And Alicia is extraordinarily talented in helping people to access their bodies and feel safe in their bodies, and to access what we know from neuroscience. You need to, in order to get control over yourself, you need to access that interoceptive midline structures of the cortex, as we call it from in neuroscience, and to access that interoceptive looking, feeling yourself quality of your body. And so Alicia, together with Kathy Melchiori, will end the conference helping us actually to get into our bodies and to feel calm, something, of course, terribly important in right now when we're all dealing with the loneliness and the isolation and the fear of the COVID virus that is so much part of our world. Learning how to be calm and safe inside is, of course, terribly important. So that's the conference.
Well, as ever, it sounds amazing. And I think, although we wouldn't wish it to be like this, it's a great opportunity this year for more people to access it than usual. You know, I mean, for me, it's a long journey, it's expensive, and now I get to soak it all up from home. What's the actual details of the conference? Do you know the dates and the price?
So the price is very reasonable. It's $199, which is pretty affordable for most people. And you go on the website, traumaresearchfoundation.org, and that's where you gain access. There's continuing education credits. For the US, I don't know how international that's going to be, but what I'm very pleased about is that people from all over the world will be able to join us. And we hope to broadcast it twice so that people in Australia, Japan, and China, and Europe, who are all in different time zones, can access it at a time that makes sense to them. And we hope to keep the program online for, we don't quite know yet what people will agree to, but more or less for 30 days, so you can really reflect on it and see it and take it in.
Well, it's fantastic. And maybe this might be a template for your future conferences, that there might be an online and offline. It's one of the advantages of our lives being changed is we may find better ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, we clearly, you know, I think this whole worldwide crisis is going to have a gigantic impact on how we present things, on mental health in general. I think there's going to be many things that we are going to learn. I'm very concerned that we need connection with each other, and most people I know during the crisis are maintaining their connections. Like I'm again struck what a pleasure it is to talk with you right now, Benjamin. There's something very wonderful that we can do, even though we were so far apart. At the same time, what I'm also impressed with is that people drive each other crazy. And being locked up in the same room with somebody else, or with your teenage kids, or with your whiny 4-year-old, is very hard on people. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much people are able to keep their family violence and their irritation under control, how people can contain their impact on going out there and hanging out with other people. I think we're going to learn a lot, And then, of course, is the profound economic consequences of all this. So we're really at the beginning of a whole new era of human history, and we don't know what will happen after this.
Well, we don't, but fortunately we have people like you helping us to know more about humans in general, which helps us to get ahead of the curve of change, and society will change and people will change. Well, I'm just delighted that it's going ahead. I'll miss seeing you there, and I'll miss seeing you in Europe, and we'll miss your visit to Khiron Clinics this summer, and that's a shame. But as our esteemed Majesty says, we will meet again.
Right, and we'll have a virtual glass of Sauvignon Blanc.
And I'm just glad we could do a little bit to support you with this conference, and I wish you every success with it. So I'll be tuning in. It's the 28th of May, is that right?
28, 29, and 30, yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, I'll see you then.
Okay.
Wish you the best luck of it, and I can't wait.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Okay.
Nice to see you.
Take very good care. Bye-bye.